I want to give you guys a story here, right? Growing up, I never really enjoyed school all that much. I might be a surprise to some people. I have a rough time in environments where I got to play by the rules, where I got to abide exactly by, school wasn't my thing. So I used to have this thing because there were a good handful of teachers that I didn't like. And my saying to myself, I never verbalized this out loud. I wish there was a moment where I could have. I was never like a bad kid. I just didn't like school. Like I was never the type of kid to like get kicked out of the classroom. But if the teachers could hear my internal thoughts, I definitely would have gotten kicked out of the classroom. And my internal thoughts used to be when the teachers would be all kind of high and mighty. I had a lot of people, I wanted to do this as a career from a very young age. So there were a lot of teachers, specifically in the math and science departments, that didn't want to hear that I wanted to do this. Newsflash, there's not a lot of math and not a lot of science that's going into what I'm doing on the radio with you guys right now. So I had an internal dialogue, an internal phrase that I would tell myself, and it would make me feel better as a young individual that struggled in school. And the line that I would tell myself was, those who can't do, teach. Isn't that what we have on our hands here with Deshaun Watson? As the reports come out that he will be taking Shedeur Sanders under his wing and mentoring Shedeur Sanders. And that's because those who cannot do, teach. And those who cannot teach math was always kind of the second part of the jingle that I would tell myself. But
did you tell your teachers this?
No, I would say it to myself to make myself feel better when things weren't going my way. I wish, like, looking back at it now, like, there were some teachers that, like, kind of probably took it too far. Like, I wish I would have got to say that once. There was a specific teacher, like, I wish I could have delivered that line to, but I used to consistently tell that to myself to make myself feel better. Like, these people aren't mathematicians or scientists out in the real world. They're teaching me how to do math and science because they couldn't go out there and do it themselves. That used to make like a young 9-10-year-old Nick Padone feel much better about my current situation. But that's the situation that Deshaun Watson finds himself in. He can't do anything on the field. And I know Mary Kay Cabot was on The Fan earlier today and said that there could be a time in October or November where he could be medically cleared, and she didn't see a path to get him on the field. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But when the social media streets got a hold of this headline that Deshaun is taking Shedeur Sanders under his wing, I think it did what the people that put it out there, it got the reaction that people were looking for. People were mad. People were pissed because here's Deshaun Watson poison balling our young, sweet Shedeur Sanders. And how could he? How could Shedeur Sanders, take advice from this bad, evil man? Listen, I have been on the record as probably the most anti-Deshaun Watson person out there that exists. I never wanted that trade to happen in the first place. I thought Baker Mayfield earned that 5th year. I understood from a football standpoint that you get a perennial MVP candidate in Deshaun Watson who could help you hang with the likes of the Mahomes and the Josh Allens, and that never materialized. Deshaun Watson never did anything for the Browns. But with that in mind, I don't necessarily think that it's a bad thing that he's mentoring Shedeur Sanders, because I think Deshaun Watson's value certainly isn't on the field. He's completely washed, and that was the case before rupturing his Achilles twice. So you've got a guy that's washed up, but you've got a guy that at one point was an MVP candidate, at one point went through the trials and tribulations of the double-digit civil allegations that were against him and settling those and suspensions and how to carry yourself as a franchise quarterback and as a leader. And I disagree with the way that Deshaun managed a lot of that. I disagree with the way that Deshaun carried himself really ever since arriving in Cleveland. But I do think him taking Shedeur Sanders under his wing could be a good thing because Deshaun does have proven NFL experience. That's the same thing could be said for Joe Flacco. And we heard from Shedeur himself that he had valued learning from Joe Flacco throughout minicamp and OTAs and all that good stuff. The other guys in the room, that can't be said for them.
It can't be said for Joe Flacco?
It could be said for Joe Flacco, and it could be said for Deshaun Watson, but Shedeur Sanders ain't learning nothing from Dillon Gabriel. He's also a rookie. He's not learning anything from Kenny Pickett. Maybe a thing or two, but Kenny Pickett hasn't done anything in the National Football League.
Well, he was a starter. He was a first-round pick. He was on a Super Bowl winning team.
Yeah, but he's always just been there. Whereas Deshaun Watson, like riddle me this. If there is a way, and maybe this is wishful thinking from me, there's a way that Deshaun Watson can help Shedeur understand what it takes to be a top 5 quarterback in football, because there was a time where Deshaun Watson was a top 5 quarterback in football. You know what I'm saying? Whereas Kenny Pickett has always just been, yeah, Kenny Pickett was a first-round pick. He started a couple games, had a couple come from behind victories. Dillon Gabriel, also a rookie. Joe Flacco, Super Bowl champ, can't take that away from him, but is also a fossil. I don't think Joe Flacco probably relates to Shedeur Sanders on a personal level the same way that Deshaun is able to relate to Shedeur Sanders on a personal level because of the age thing. You know, they're a lot similar in age, and I think they kind of, I think the whole locker room kind of looks at Joe Flacco as that's Unc. You know, that's the old man in the room. I really don't think it's that bad of a thing. And I think people see Deshaun in the news, and it's easy to put your fists up and be mad and get him away from Shedeur. Shedeur's our prize jewel. Shedeur's our take it away from you, Deshaun Watson, which I do think is true. We've talked about that on here, and we'll talk about it a little bit later in the show. I do think, ironically enough, Shedeur Sanders is the Browns' path to quickly rinsing your hands of just how bad the Deshaun Watson stench stunk up Berea over the last couple seasons. But at the same time, I don't think that Deshaun should just be ostracized from the organization because he flamed out on the field and he got injured a bunch. Like, I do think Deshaun, people might hate to hear it, like, Deshaun does have valuable football insights in there. I have to believe that. I can't believe that he is just some, bad guy off the field, which was alleged at length, and we don't need to rehash that, but also some brain-dead football moron that just lucked into all of those miraculous seasons that he gave the Houston Texans. Like, I believe that there's got to be a football mind in there that might be human enough to be able to articulate to Shedeur Sanders how to manage his business on the field and off of it. Does that make sense?
So because I don't want Deshaun Watson anywhere near the Browns facilities. Like, I was pissed when the initial report came out about him training at the facilities, right? This is the same guy that your owner called a big swing and a miss and somebody that you need to get out from under. It's the entire reason why we've had to cut some veteran guys to get under the salary cap and why Myles Garrett requested a trade this offseason. So I guess the question is, if he's going to be there, what do you want from him? If you say that Shedeur Sanders is the savior that you think he is, what do you want Deshaun Watson to teach the guy?
Because could it be as simple as learn from my mistakes? Don't do what I did. And I'm with you there. I really don't I'm not going to give Deshaun that sort of credit because he hasn't been that humble. He hasn't shown that level of humility since arriving in Cleveland. Perhaps him taking Shedeur Sanders under his wing is some sort of self-fulfilling prophecy for Deshaun Watson to try to show the front office and the coaching staff and ownership that he could be the leader. He still could be the guy, because we've heard him say that when he's healthy, he still wants to start games. He's taking this rehab seriously as if he could be a starting quarterback in the National Football League again. But I do think Shedeur has stuff to learn from Deshaun, because at one point, Deshaun was really good.
Yeah, 6 years ago. At
one point, Deshaun had the Dabo Sweeney MJ on cleats. And since, like you said, 6 years ago, 6 years removed, he's been a joke.
Yeah,
he's probably at rock bottom.
All right,
so maybe that's something. How about this? Maybe that's something that him and Shedeur could have in common. maybe Deshaun sees what Shedeur went through and the kind of the humiliation that was the NFL draft experience, where you think you're going number 2 overall and you end up going 144 overall. Takes a little bit of wind out of your sails. Don't let it, kid.
Yeah,
but like, even if he could give him that sort of advice and that sort of motivation, I think it's a positive, because I think for Shedeur, it's somebody that he can relate to. And I don't think it's
totally
the worst thing on planet Earth.
Everything. What is Deshaun going to say?
Because evidently he has to be with there. I'm with you. In a dream world, Deshaun is getting paid. He's on his boat somewhere in Florida. He's doing his TikTok dances with his new wife, and we never hear from him again. That's the dream world. For whatever reason, we're forced to put up with him. For whatever reason, we're forced to talk about him. We're forced to hear about him. And he's in Berea managing this rehab as if he's going to have some sort of chance to reclaim his NFL career. Since he's here, I don't hate that he's at least being useful, since we've got to put up with him.
But it's just, what is he going to tell?
Because those who can't do teach. That's exactly why.
What is he going to? Okay, Shedeur, don't do what I did. I sat out for a year because I wanted a contract extension, because I was a top 5 football player on a 4-12 Texans team in a bad organization. And then all the allegations came down, which was self-induced. And then I came to Cleveland and I accepted the place that would give me the fully guaranteed contract over other better situations. And then I didn't assert myself as a leader of this football team in the locker room. And I made everything about me. And I let my personal quarterback coach go out in the media and say all the things that he had to say. And then he tore his Achilles and his career was basically over. I just don't know what there is there to learn if you're Shedeur Sanders. Everything that Shedeur Sanders needs to learn about being an NFL quarterback, he can learn from Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett. Deshaun Watson needs to be nowhere near Shedeur Sanders or Dillon Gabriel.
Because I think it's one of those scenarios, man, where it's exactly that. It's learn from me. Don't be like me. Look at everything that I've done to be at rock bottom where I'm at now, where they're bringing in 4 different quarterbacks to try to replace me. Like, I think there's something from Deshaun's story and from Deshaun's journey from Houston and Cleveland alike that Shedeur Sanders can take away from and learn from. What's nice for Browns fans is Mary Kay said it's wildly unlikely that Deshaun's ever going to play for the Browns again on the field, but you could never say never. There's a reason why that conversation has to be had. I just told you guys that I don't really mind Deshaun mentoring or taking Shedeur Sanders under his wing, because I subscribe to the philosophy of those who cannot do, teach. With that said, with that in mind, Deshaun Watson cannot, I repeat, cannot suit up for a regular season game with the Cleveland Browns ever again. It's the one thing in my mind, Anthony, that Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski could do to lose everybody, in terms of the fan base, in terms of the locker room, in terms of Joel Bitonio, who had one foot in Berea and the other foot in retirement, in terms of their employment in the National Football League. Deshaun Watson, under no circumstance should he take a snap in the regular season for our Cleveland Browns ever again. I truly believe that with my whole heart, with my whole chest. You could throw out a scenario and I will tell you that it should not be Deshaun Watson. The one thing that I've heard that it's almost gotten a yeah, maybe, but out of me is week 18 against the Cincinnati Bengals. If it's already a lost season, if you found out that Shedeur Sanders can't play and is no good, if you found out that Dillon Gabriel is no good, if you found out Kenny Pickett's not good, Joe Flacco's too old, and week 18, you just need somebody and you're paying Deshaun, so you throw him out there in week 18 against the Bengals to lose a game to improve your draft positioning, I still tell you no. Bring back Johnny Manziel for one more game.
Oh, I would throw him out if it means we get a better draft spot for sure. But
no,
yeah, I mean, that's the only situation.
I wouldn't. I would bring back Johnny Manziel and let him play week 18. He's plenty bad. He could lose a game for me one more time.
So any scenario where Deshaun Watson starts a game in Cleveland ended when a small consortium of fans, but some fans in the building, cheered and clapped when he was carted off the field after tearing his Achilles. That was it.
What makes you think that that was the moment?
Because how, as an owner, do you sit there and watch your fan base, a part of them, like I know it wasn't everybody, cheer your quote unquote franchise quarterback as he is carted off the field after suffering a season-ending injury? How do you look at that and say, "Oh yeah, no, let's throw him back out there. I'm sure he'll win over the locker room again."
So it goes without saying here, right, that the fans deserve better than Deshaun Watson. That's the biggest no-brainer statement that we've said on this show this evening. But they owe it to the locker room to have that fresh, the fresh breath of air, the change of scenery at quarterback. That's why they brought back Joe Flacco, folks. Like they owed it to Miles. They owed it to Joel Bitonio. They owed it to these guys that have been around the block and that have suffered long enough. Just like you, the fans, have. But these guys are literally putting their bodies through car accidents week in and week out on the football field, leaving it all on the line for what? For Deshaun Watson? No way. And that's the one thing that Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, as tempting as it might be, because you look, my biggest fear for this Browns season, you look at the first couple games on the schedule, first 6 weeks, brutal, including that trip to London, brutal. There's a real world scenario where the calendar could flip to October and November and you're searching for a couple of wins. And you could get the report from the national big Schefters, rap sheets, Field Yates. Oh, here it comes. Deshaun Watson could be cleared. Should the Browns look that direct? Nope. Look any other direction. There's nothing that you're going to find under that stone. We usually say when we're talking about the Browns and we're looking to end this quarterback drought that this franchise has had since 1999, leave no stone unturned. That's one stone that you could leave turned.
Yeah, I don't even think they envision a situation like even the week 18 thing that you threw out there where Deshaun Watson starts anymore. Like they fired the offensive coordinator that they brought in. They've been talking all offseason about we're going to return to 2023 and 2020 and the offense that worked under Joe Flacco and Baker Mayfield. So the biggest question really isn't like would Deshaun start again? It's what do you do once you have 5 quarterbacks on the roster? Because it does seem more and more likely that they are going to carry all 4 quarterbacks on the roster. And I'm actually okay with that. Yeah. Like I'm totally fine with keeping them all here and you can manipulate the practice squad however you want to and just figuring it out that way until either an injury pops up or a good trade that you can't pass up pops up.
Agreed.
But yeah, the question then becomes, he is somebody that you employ. It's going to start a really bad precedent if you just say, well, yeah, you're active, but you're not really active. And it could be just as simple as you're active. We're going to practice squad you and that'll be that. We'll inactive you for every single game. Like it doesn't really matter.
Right.
But that is still the big question of what do you do when he comes back and he's cleared to play?
And there should be no way. And I'm going to continue. I sound like a broken record. There should be no way that he ever steps foot on the field for the Browns ever again. I am with you on the carrying 4 quarterbacks thing. I think some people try to make a bigger deal of that than what it actually is. Because I've heard the other side of the debate being, well, you can't carry Flacco, Pickett, Shedeur, and Dillon Gabriel because you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're going to lose a special teams linebacker. Safety room's going to be a little bit thinner, maybe offensive lineman, doesn't get to be on the active roster because you've got so many quarterbacks. Listen, that's fine. This team ain't winning the Super Bowl this year. This team's probably not going to the playoffs this year. Like those are the type of things that you worry about when you've got a roster that's figured out and a roster that's put together. We've covered it, Anthony, on the Sunday show at large with Daryl Ryder. This season is very much so a season where you're throwing stuff at the wall and you're going to see what sticks. And the biggest thing that you need to throw at the wall and see if it sticks is the quarterback position, because it's imperative that they find a way to move off of Deshaun. Like that's the biggest thing is that June 1st cut announcement. Whoever it comes from, if it comes from the official Browns account on social media, if it comes from Rap Sheet, if it comes from Schefter, that announcement is going to do wonders for me. That the Cleveland Browns have designated quarterback Deshaun Watson for a post June 1st release. One of the worst trades in NFL history. Deshaun Watson will never be back with the Cleveland Browns. That is going to do wonders for me. But until we get there, he's around for whatever reason.
I mean,
he's around.
It does lurk, and I'd like to get to the Mary Kay audio and kind of see what she said earlier today. I believe she was on with Baskin and Phelps about this is something that you just simply have to consider by the simple fact that he's employed by the Cleveland Browns, but it's just such a non-factor.
Well, here we go. Here's Mary Kay Cabot on Deshaun Watson's employment status, I guess.
He's very involved. He's in the meeting rooms. He's been watching some practice. He's helping the two young guys a lot, just trying to get up to speed in the offense and with their terminology and pointing things out. And he's done a really, really nice job with that, to the point where the Browns are very, very happy with him in that regard. But he will start the season on the physically unable to perform list.
Yeah, I don't even want him in there looking at the play sheets with the young guys.
The physically unable to perform list is it's so morbid to say, because I was not one of the people, as much as I disliked Deshaun Watson. Like when he went down, it was like, man, this is really the end. Like I wasn't one to celebrate, because I was like, if anything, this makes us look even worse. Like this makes this trade look even worse than it somehow already is. But I kind of wish that he could just stay on the physically unable to perform. Like, just stay away. Don't pose any threat, because we laid out for you, the fans, kind of the nightmare scenario where this is a lost season early, and you're kind of looking at the rest of the schedule, trying to find where you could find a win. And maybe the conversation has had you insert Deshaun Watson to see what he has left, or just to be that bad and be kind of the meat shield that could stand out there and take the sacks, to take the hits. Just go away. Because on the other side of the token, we're talking about how brutal this schedule is. But humor me on a dream scenario that I don't think is going to come to fruition. Say things are looking up. Say Kenny Pickett starts the year and it looks like you found a reclamation project. Say Joe Flacco starts the year and he's showing you some of that Flacco magic, that Flacco fever that took us to the playoffs. Say Shedeur, Dillon Gabriel, we're hearing optimistic reports out of practice. Things are starting to look up. Things are starting to go well. Don't be that dark shadow. Don't be that black cloud that's going to hover over Berea come late October, come Halloween. That's my favorite part of the year. The Starbucks menu flips. You start getting the pumpkin spice. Like, don't be there just putting a dark cloud on all of my fun. That is Browns football.
It's going to happen.
It is going to happen. It's going to be a very uncomfortable. I'm calling it now. I'm calling it in July, man. It's going to be an uncomfortable time when we hear that report that Deshaun Watson's getting closer and closer to becoming physically cleared to participate in practices and eventually take snaps. Like, what are we doing? Because even then, even the practice snaps, right? Like when you're physically cleared and you're on the roster, like I'm not giving Deshaun Watson any snaps, not one snap over Shedeur, over Dillon Gabriel, even Kenny Pickett, if he's still in town and not the starting quarterback by then, if they do start the season with Flacco. Like, the guys, it's over. It's done. I get that it's uncomfortable and that he's going to be around and that you gave him that 5-year contract that's, an outlier in the history of National Football League quarterback contracts, but just go away, man.
So you want him to go away, but you also are okay with him mentoring Shedeur Sanders?
I'm okay with him mentoring Shedeur. Like, I want, at my core, I want him to go away, but I understand that since he's not away and since for whatever reason he's around, I'll at least take him having conversations with Shedeur versus taking snaps away from Shedeur. Does that make sense? Like, if I'm going to be forced to put up with you, at least try to be a little bit of a net positive. My dream world, which is never going to happen, is that Shams Charania breaks right now that LeBron James comes home, and then Adam Schefter says that Deshaun Watson's heading to the Los Angeles Rams to be Matt Stafford's backup for a year. Like, that's my dream world, but I'm not going to get that. I'm plenty aware that that's not going to happen, and I'm forced to put up with Deshaun Watson for one more year, and at some point there's going to be an uncomfortable conversation.
Oh, yeah. It's going to come. Like, that is going to happen. That day is going to happen where it's Deshaun Watson has been physically cleared to play and he's going to take snap. The snaps thing is very interesting in practice. Like it's been the big conversation this offseason about how do you even handle 4 guys in practice, especially 2 rookies where you have 2 first-round picks and you need to figure out what these rookies have. And then you have that reclamation project in Kenny Pickett. But also imagine having another guy there that also nobody in the building or the fan base wants.